Hi, friends. Welcome to Grounding Journey. And if this is the first time you're finding us, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited. This is going to be an amazing conversation. And if you're returning, thank you for coming back again and again. You are the reason that I get to keep doing this and I get to live out this passion of my life. So, today's episode, we are going to talk with Felicia, and she is a feng shui medicine wheel, feng shui soul coaching master practitioner, trainer. And if you're like me, feng shui always sounded really neat and like a lot of structure and overwhelming to do my house with. And our house is our sanctuary. I used to have painted on my wall, home is where your story begins. And so Felicia is going to empower us to create space that brings joy, that allows energy to flow for us, and really love what we've created in our home without the pressure and the stress of trying to do it right. I'm Chris Greer, host of the Grounding Journey podcast and creator of My Happy Life Box. My Happy Life Box is my passion and my gift to you to help support you in creating a life that brings you joy and passion and sparks your creativity and ignites your excitement for life again. It is your guide to midlife, menopause, and beyond. And the Grounding Journey podcast was another creation. It was my first that I got to create. I was seeking conversations that enriched my life, that gave me something more, and it helped me feel not alone. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. So welcome, welcome, Felicia. I'm so excited you're here. And I've read your bio. I've talked about what we're talking today. And so I would love for you just to take a minute and tell us who Felicia is, who you want your friends and family and close ones to know you as outside of your formal bio. I know that's
Wow.
always a big question.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm
Yeah.
excited to be here with you all. And who am I? Well, I'm a mother of four. I am a I've been in the education world for so long. Like one of my favorite things is teaching. So I'll
Mm.
I'll teach anybody. Anybody who's willing to learn, I'll teach. I love playing with Legos. I love traveling, and I love making things with my hands.
Mm. I love that. All of those check box, check box, check box. It was really hard when my son moved out about a year ago. As we knew he was preparing to move out, he had a Lego room that was his playroom. And to pack all that stuff up was just a little heart aching because it was hard after all the years of playing Legos. So I get you. And they're fun. Well, I'm
Yeah.
excited to have the conversation today. As I mentioned in the intro, I've wanted to have the feng shui conversation with somebody for a long time. And then when you came across my path, I was so excited the things you had to say about feng shui and using it as an empowerment instead of a rules. And I think that's really powerful. And kind of the theme for our conversation today is you don't have to live and do life by the rules. You get to decide. And so you've personally gone through that in your own life that led you to feng shui. And then you use that principle throughout.
Mhm. Yeah, it was the concept of feng shui kind of came out of nowhere, really. I was, oh gosh, I'm not trying to think how many years. I guess it was around 15 or 16 years now, at least. Um, I was kind of, I was burnt out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I was teaching in public school, very demanding job, and I had three young children, and it was just kind of like one thing after another, taking care of everybody. And I was like, gee, I'm tired.
Mm.
um, and I was finding like less joy in the things that I was doing. And I'm like, there has to be something else. There has to, there
Mm-hmm.
was joy before, there can be joy again. And, let's find something that, brings me joy. And I went to a retreat, it was a women's empowerment retreat.
Mm.
And the retreat leader said, okay, make a list of everything you love to do. And, I made this list and I didn't think, I was like, these things have nothing to do with each other. It was things like interior decorating. I had been an art history major in college, so art history, um, yoga was on the list, things like astrology and numerology, because those are things that fascinated me at the time. And there were just all these like things on the list. And I'm like, okay, this is a lot of stuff. And
Mhm.
she said, now look at the list and you'll find that the thing that you're passionate about by looking, examining and reflecting on your list. And so I started doing Google searches, like different combinations of the words. And
Oh, I like that. I've
yeah,
never thought of that.
it was really interesting. But something that kept coming up was like the term feng shui. And I'm like, what is that?
Mm.
So I started investigating that and adding that to my like word combos. And then the one thing that kept coming up was Denise Lin and her interior alignment feng shui system and school. And I was like, oh, what's this? um, and so I looked into the school, I talked to some of the teachers. And when I finally got a copy of or talked about, a list of the curriculum and the topics, everything that was on my list was part of the curriculum. And even the yoga part, the teacher that I chose to work with was also a yoga teacher. So we incorporated yoga into part of the training.
Oh, I
um,
love that.
yeah. So it was fun, and it like opened up a whole new world for me.
Well, and it, I love that you just started exploring because so we discussed before we went on camera our ages, and so you're a little bit on the other side of me. So this all was happening to you in your mid 40s, right?
Yes.
Early 40s.
Early, yeah, early. Well, yeah, early 40s.
Yeah, which I think is so common for all of us that in our 40s, we hit this moment of, okay, I accomplished that first big thing, whether it was a milestone in my career, raising kids, whatever that milestone is. And that's the beauty of midlife is we get to hit here and say, okay, I've got another 40 years possibly to live. How am I going to create that? And what am I going to do to be vibrant and full of myself and fulfilled instead of just living by the rules? And like I say that, and I've just got huge goosebumps because I know that was a big thing for me in my early 40s. And it kind of happened naturally. I didn't even see it. And now when I look back, I'm like, oh, well, isn't that fun? And so now I'm being intentional about what do I want to do with the next 35 years. So let's talk for a moment what that felt like for you, because you said you were in public school education. I know that you had told me your husband worked rotating shifts and you had 3 kids. So you had a lot of responsibility. You had a lot of structure, probably being a teacher. You had your school season, your summer season, your kids.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of us get frozen of I really want something more, but I'm in this constraint of what I have to do right now. So what did that feel like as you became aware of not being happy and wanting more?
Well, it was very interesting because I did kind of feel like I'm I was the family organizer. I was the schedule
Mhm.
organizer. And so it's like everything fits in a space. And
Yeah.
everything has to be done in a certain order, in a certain way, in order to get like everybody organized and everything done. And
Uh-huh.
so kind of like stepping out of that kind of reignited my creativity, where I was like, okay,
Mm.
so these things still need to happen. But let me like take a look at what are the other ways, like how can this still happen and me incorporate more of my passions into it. And it's not
Mhm.
that the things I was doing didn't bring me joy, but it was just, I needed kind of like an infusion of
Yeah.
creativity and something that I was really interested in
Well,
for
and
myself.
I appreciate you saying that because maybe my words came out wrong because I love being a mom. Like that was my greatest joy. And even though it had structure and it had a routine and it had the humdrum mundane, it filled my soul to be Kevin's mom. Like that was, I would say, was my greatest job title. And that job title was evolving and changing because he was creating his own life. So it was time to focus on what brought me passion. And as
Yeah.
you said, sparked me. And that was an uncomfortable feeling because I hadn't had to focus on what I needed. I got to focus on what he needed, and that fulfilled me. So now I was fully dependent on myself for my fulfillment and taking that leap and taking that jump. You know, I went back to school when I was 37 and changed my degree. And that was big. I remember the first day of going back to school, like the night before, being nervous of I don't know what to wear, but in the sense of, am I going to be cold or hot? Like, not fashion like you would have in school, or
Uh-huh.
where am I going to park? What classroom am I going to? Like, it was just 20 years later, I was going
Yeah.
through the same emotions. Um, so, you know, what did it feel like for you as you said, okay, this is what I'm doing, I'm jumping? Like, so let me ask this too. I know I'm asking you like 9-part questions and you're trying to remember every part I asked. What were you a teacher of?
I hesitated because it's like technically art.
Okay.
We had a unique program at the school where the art teacher, the English teacher, and the social studies teacher worked very closely together. So we studied and created art based on the period of social studies that the students
Ooh.
were learning about. And so it was more like art history, like museum studies, kind of all rolled into to one.
That sounds fascinating. I always said that my dream career would have been being an art museum curator. So I
Oh,
love
me
that you
too.
were, yeah, when you said that earlier, I'm like, oh, that's what I wanted to do. Um, so that's a neat and interesting way to be an art. And knowing that you were an art teacher, I can see that sparking your creativity was really important to you, to feeling
Mhm.
that as a graphic designer. Like that's where I took my love of art is into
Mhm.
graphic design. So I know there's definitely times that I'm like, I have to create one more logo or build one more website. Like I don't have it in me. So
Mhm.
I can completely understand why creativity was important. So, what was it like for you when you got to that point? Because you're not still a teacher, are you?
I'm not, but I do manage an education program,
Okay.
but I'm not a teacher. Um,
Okay.
I support teachers.
That's awesome. So, when did you make that switch from not being a teacher to being an entrepreneur?
Um, hmm. I maybe so it was around so my last year of teaching was 2016.
Okay. So, you've been an entrepreneur for a while.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about what that switch felt like, because I believe that there are many listeners that are here that are like, oh, I want to do that. I don't have the means, or I'm afraid, or, you know, limiting beliefs. I happened into mine by accident. My husband and I always say we accidentally started a successful business. We sent it to our life insurance guy, and he's like, "How do you do that?" But let's talk about you actually making the switch from being a teacher to being an entrepreneur.
It's very interesting. So in 2015, I was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer.
Oh wow!
And I continued to teach like throughout that year, and I taught the year following. And then, you know, I was just like, you know what? I just don't have the energy.
Yeah.
I need to take care of myself and
Hmm.
taking, even though I love to teach, taking care, this is not like helpful for me and my well-being to continue to exert so much energy when I'm still
Yeah.
trying to heal. And so I actually found another um, job where um, I coach teachers And it's a program where it's like I can't really let go of this
Mm,
because it's a program in the public schools that helps students to discover their gifts and passions.
mm,
So it's like I'm like, oh, this is what I needed. And so
yeah,
to coach teachers in doing that, like, and supporting those students is like another passion that I discovered. So
yeah,
I'm doing that, but then I'm also like, okay, now is my time to spend more time, really getting into the feng shui and really like not only applying it to my own life, but supporting other people. Because like when I went through that first cancer diagnosis and treatment, I could see how the things I had learned, like the feng shui, the clutter clearing, the meditation, I could see how all of that supported me in healing. And so it kind of, like more light bulbs kind of went off like, okay, so this stuff, like, yeah, I knew it worked before, but now I know it really works.
hmm
And it works in different circumstances in different ways. And I really feel that it's been a huge part of my healing journey since then.
I love that. And I don't, I shy away from the word awakening because I think that word puts so much pressure on it.
Mhm.
But I do like saying an awareness. So it sounds like your body was really yelling, hey, hey, pay attention, pay attention. Let's, something's not right here. Um, and that brought you to a full awareness of your life and your experiences now.
Yeah, it has. And it continues to do so.
I bet. Well,
um,
you look healthy. So I know that my listeners are going to wonder, how is your health now? Are you still struggling with things?
It's very interesting. So that was 2015 that I had the colon cancer diagnosis. Since then, I've had two different breast cancer diagnoses. Um,
Wow.
I am cancer free. And
Congratulations.
it's still challenging in some ways because I have to be really like aware of and mindful of my energy and what do I want to spend energy, how do I want to spend
Yeah.
energy because I don't want to tire myself out doing something that doesn't bring me joy. Um, but as I learn to take care of myself and learn what my body needs, I've noticed that, like, especially this year, my energy is like increase, kind of like leveling out and increasing,
Mhm.
and it's like becoming more abundant.
Yeah. Well, and I think that self care is such a struggle for all of us. As we said before, that first half of our lives where we're focused on our career or focused on our child or focused on our family. And then we have this next half of our lives that we get to focus on ourselves and learning how to do self-care for ourselves. And you had a crash course in it. Like it was your life. You had to figure it
Yeah.
out. That's some powerful stuff. With You have four children now. We talked about you had three in the beginning. But that's some serious crash course learning when you have children at home and have to really take care of yourself. I imagine that's
Yeah,
been a long journey for you.
it has, but it's, been a lot of learning and healing and positive change. So.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that through your healing, you came back to the clutter clearing and the feng shui. How did that make that connection for you?
So, it's like I had read in my studies, how important it is to to make, so our environments are a reflection of our mindset.
Hmm.
And so when I was going through the experiences with cancer and the treatment, I became very aware of, I want really positive healing things in my environment.
Yeah.
So it prompted me to just take like a really good look at like what are the images I have in my house? What are the things that are just sitting around like that I'm not using or that I really don't like that I'm keeping for whatever reason I made up. Um, and So I just started going through things and like rearranging things to create like a real sanctuary. Um, and knowing that it doesn't have to be like this is the way our home should be every day, a
Yeah.
sanctuary.
I appreciate that. We're personally in my life right now. I've mentioned on the podcast a couple of times. My son moved out. He got engaged in January and he moved out in February. Well, he is buying my parents' home
Oh.
um, that my parents have lived in since I was 6.
Mhm.
So 42 years. Um, they've had raised 2 kids and a grandson in that house. And the amount of stuff that we are clearing out.
Mhm.
I spent the weekend actually with my mom and dad over there clearing it out. And my dad was in tears the whole time, and my mom was on the verge of tears. And I said to them both, I know this is really hard for you to get rid of your stuff, but Kevin was going to get the house now or when you passed. And isn't it great that you can do it with joy of handing it over to him
Mhm.
instead of him having to go through your stuff in sorrow? And my
Yeah.
mom called me the next day and was like, wow, that was really powerful. We're going to, because they're moving to the coast. And she said, we're going to wait an extra week so we can really get through everything to give Kevin that space. And it's been interesting for me to go through their stuff
Mhm.
because I've been working with Kevin for 6 months to get through their stuff. We finally got them home long enough to go through it with us. Um, and hearing what you say of there were definitely things that I'm like, oh, well, this was always in my house. We should save it. And thinking, okay, where am I going to put this? It has
Mhm.
no joy to me. But I'm a very ancestors kind of thing. So anything that's been in my family for generations, I'm like, oh, well, we got to keep it.
Mhm.
I don't know what to do with it. Um, so thinking about that clutter and poor Kevin is living in chaos right now, and it's
Mhm.
reflecting in what's going on with his health actually and what's going on in his world because there's his boxes and his stuff and Rose's stuff and my parents stuff. um, so just to kind of lend into that of he's in this he's definitely in more turmoil than normal
Mhm.
because his house is chaotic.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's often how it works. Like we don't realize a lot of times I think we don't realize like what our house really looks like because it's just the environment we're in every day. It's just the way it
Yeah.
is. But if we really take a look at like, especially if we're experiencing challenges in different areas of our lives, just take a look around and see like where is there clutter and what do you
Mhm.
have that's maybe piled up or things you don't use anymore, things you shoved in the attic or the basement or
Mine is my
just to
laundry
get it out
room.
of the
My
way.
my laundry room is a disaster, and it's stuff coming from my parents' house to here now that I'm
Mhm.
like, okay,
Oh
I'm going to take it
yeah.
to Goodwill or I'm going to take it to the consignment store and laundry room.
Yeah. And a lot of time, because clutter represents stuck energy. So if we're trying to
Mhm.
get like energy moving in our lives and things like cleared out and not chaotic, the best way to do that, and it works like magic, is just to clear some clutter.
Yeah, I have intended to. I mean, my laundry room was like, don't let me blame it on my parents' stuff. My laundry room was my catch-all room because I have a very large laundry room. It's like 12 by 12 and it is stuffed.
Wow.
Um, and so it's been on the top of my list to get my laundry room cleared out. But I keep dedicating my time to Kevin's house and to my parents.
Hmm.
Uh, that my laundry room just keeps getting more stuff stuck in it, which is what we do. We
Yeah.
dedicate ourselves to others to be acts of service and forget to do it for ourselves. And so I'm totally doing my own loop of, but they need me, but I need me. Oh, well, it's easier to be there for them right now.
Yeah. And it is easier to help others a lot of
Oh, it's
times.
way easier to go through their stuff than to go through my stuff. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I really appreciated, because you and I talked a month or two ago just to kind of have an initial conversation. And I have my soul sister who I talk about on my podcast sometimes. I always call her my soul sister. She's really good at astrology because I can be like, hey, how are you? I'm in a funk. And she's like, oh, well, your ninth moon is here and you're da da da, like rattles it off. And I'm like, oh,
Uh-huh.
that makes so much sense. Well, she's that way about feng shui too. So
Mhm.
I'll say something, oh, well, that's in your travel corner. And I'm like, okay, you need to move that into your prosperity corner, And my mother-in-law years ago, I don't know how much she really does feng shui, but she talks about it. Like walking into her house, it's not obvious to me. Like walking into my friend's house, it's obvious that she's done some feng shui. So my mother-in-law gave me a feng shui book years ago for Christmas or my birthday or something. And I spent like 2 months reading it cover to cover, highlighting, underlining. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go work on our house. And that's as far as it got. It's like, well, which way am I supposed to use the map? Because this is the front door, but this is the door we come in, and da 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 da. And it just got too much. And, years ago, at least in my circle, feng shui was a heavy conversation. It's not as much in my circle anymore. I don't know if it was the time or if it was just my circle, which is why I wanted somebody to come talk feng shui. And when we were talking about it, one of the things you said to me was, and I totally don't remember the right wording that you said, so please correct me on the words. Something along the lines of, you don't have to use the map, you do what feels good for you. And that was like, okay, that sounds wonderful. And I love that. So let's talk a little bit about that, because now everybody else is like, oh, you mean it doesn't have to be by the map?
Yeah, so feng shui could be an extremely complicated endeavor. And because it is, every single culture has a version of feng shui. If you go back and look at, the way your ancestors
Oh,
lived.
I did
And
not know that. I mean,
yeah.
I just have that one map. So interesting. Okay.
And so there are lots of different schools of feng shui that approach feng shui
Mm-hmm.
from different, perspectives, different philosophies, and it can get complicated. And so a lot of
Uh-huh.
times people know more about like Chinese version of feng shui because that's the first that was like codified and written about in books, and those are, were the largest schools. And
Yeah.
so, but even with that, like you pick up two different books from two different schools and it's like completely different stuff. So if
Mm-hmm.
you really look at the essence of it, feng shui is really about creating a space where the energy flows and is supportive of you as the individual. And so it's
Mm.
like you making a connection with your house and with the objects in your house. And so it's really a personal, it's really personal. It's like creating relationship with your environment.
Mm.
And so if you're in a space and it doesn't feel uplifting and you feel kind of constricted or it's just like blah, um, you can just shift until it feels good.
Yeah.
I mean, it always is, it's always an advantage to have like a feng shui consultant come in because they can see stuff in your space that you don't see.
Mm-hmm.
They can recognize patterns and, how things should be arranged, like according to the map and according to like the other tools that are part of feng shui. But, each individual, our soul's essence, our essence, however you want to say that, knows what's best for you and your life. And so if you really tune in and kind of connect to your environment, like you can make those shifts too without like learning all the rules and all the stuff.
I love that. And that was what was so empowering to me when we talked. And again, I kept coming back to my laundry room when you said, what doesn't feel good to you? Like my laundry room. Um, but that's what's really neat is, as we talked before, I kind of went through my house and looked at the rooms and I'm like, oh, these are the rooms I spend the most amount of time in. And those are the rooms that have my touch to them. And then there's other rooms that I'm like, oh, I don't really spend time in this room. And it was funny because those were all Matthew's touches, because
Mhm.
we definitely have different spaces in the house. Um, his office is on the other end of the house and my office. And it's funny when we're on calls with clients at the same time, we 9 times out of 10, the first time we're on a call, somebody will be like, are you guys in the same place? Because our spaces look so completely
Oh,
different
wow. Mhm.
because there are personalities.
Yeah.
Um, so I think and especially now that more people work from home and more people are home,
Mhm.
that it's really empowering for you to say, make your space feel good,
Yeah. I mean, who wants
which
to
is
be in a
all
space
about
that
feeling
doesn't feel
joy.
good? Yeah.
Yeah. But I think like I said, there's a lot of stuff in my home that's ancestor stuff. My grandmother passed away a couple years ago, and I have a lot of her older furniture that was my great grandmother's or my great great grandmother's. And,
Yeah.
our bedroom suite is Matthew's grandmother's. Um, so feeling that stuck energy that you said too, I'm a big I love Denise Lynn, by the way. I forgot to
Mhm.
say that when you said that that's the school. I've read several of her books. I have the Hay House app, so I listen to her meditations through it. I'm a huge fan of Denise Lynn. But also talking about clearing the energy. You said something about clutter is stuck energy.
Mhm.
I'm a huge smudger. I use sweetgrass, I use sage, I use Palo Santo, and I will smudge furniture
Mhm.
to clear what the space it had been in before. So let's talk about stuck energy for a second.
Yeah. Everything has an energy.
Mm-hmm.
Emotions have an energy, have a frequency. And so, like, if you walk into a room where maybe somebody had a fight or somebody had been sick or something, like you can feel that. And so
Yeah.
all the objects in the space absorb all that energy, especially wood. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so doing things like using Palo Santo or sage or different things like that to kind of to clear out like that invisible clutter that you don't see um,
Yeah.
is a great thing to do in your spaces. And that can help to move and shift the energy as well.
I smudge my computer regularly, especially when I get off of a client call or something.
Mhm.
Because while our subscription box is our main business, I still have a couple clients who I've had for a long time, and I didn't send them off into the wild on their own. But I'll smudge my computer,
Mhm.
maybe by the monitor or something. I don't know where it came from, but I want to make sure it's clear.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think that's a really interesting part of the conversation is energy that we don't see. And that's, I think, a lot of the basis of feng shui is making sure there's fluidity to the energy. I like to have all my doors and windows open whenever I can because it gets the current of air flowing through my house instead of being stuck with the AC and the heat to keep that energy moving around the house and space.
Yeah. Because when you think about like things in nature, there are cycles. Things are always moving and shifting and changing.
Mm-hmm.
And, what happens when like the air stops moving? It kind of gets stagnant. What happens if you have like a body of water where there's no like movement? It kind of gets,
Mm.
icky.
It gets lots of
Think about
mosquitoes growing on the
yeah,
surface.
and then you have the mosquitoes. So if you think about your house as like part of nature and part of this environment, like how can you keep the energy moving through? So there's always like a cycle of in and out,
Mm-hmm.
giving and receiving. It's like the whole cycle of abundance, like bringing things in, giving things out. Um, so always keeping, that in mind that we want movement and clarity and we want things to flow with grace and ease.
Yeah, I love that. I love revisiting the concept of your space and clearing the clutter to open the energy and to move it. Because as much as I love using sage, I also will stack three things in the corner of the room because I don't have time to go put it away at the moment. And then a week later, it's still sitting there. So thinking about taking that moment um, and just kind of making it feel good. Like I have literally anybody who's on the video can see the stacks of to-do lists that I have. And I try at least once a week to just look at my to-do list instead of stacking it next to me because those pieces of paper, even though they're really thin and fine, I see them out of the corner of my eye all day.
Mhm.
And I remember actually it was with one of Denise Lynn's books that I was reading. She gives you the challenge to clean out that junk drawer
Mhm.
that you just throw stuff in because we all have that junk drawer. And even though nobody sees it, its energy's there.
Yeah.
I have three of those in my laundry room. And I tried to clean them out this past weekend and I was like, I don't know what to do with this stuff. And I just literally shut the doors back. Um, So, let this podcast be that moment to challenge anybody to clean out your junk drawer or clean out your junk closet, uh, to see what it feels like, and then really connect with, oh, wow, that does feel really good.
Hmm. Oh, yeah, definitely. I always recommend that people start with an intention. So, like, what do
Okay.
like, what's the purpose of this space and how do I want to feel in this space? And then, like, removing all the things that don't fit with that intention,
Mm-hmm.
seeing what's left, what you've invited to stay, arranging that in a way that supports you and what you need to do in the space. And then, like, to follow, to complete it with a space clearing using the sage or some other space clearing tool to kind of bring in and settle in that energy.
I love that. I don't think that I've ever used the intention when I was cleaning stuff out. So my intention for my laundry room will be something. I'll have to come up with a good one for that. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know that I have found some inspiration and some intention creating that will help me in the next couple of weeks clean out my space. And I know that my audience is going to be really interested in learning more. And your website has so many different things on it. You've got blogs, and I loved looking through your website. So, where are you hanging out? How can my listeners and viewers find you and learn more about you?
Well, thank you. If they go to my website, it's www.feliciadhaiti.com and sign up for my newsletter. They'll get a guided meditation and a little ebook on how to bring abundance into your life through using feng shui in your space. I'm actually working on a new ebook that's focused on clutter clearing. So that should be out like in the next couple
Mhm.
months. And once you get connected with the newsletter, you'll find out like what classes I teach, events, and I always send out, clutter clearing or feng shui or space clearing info.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. And we'll have the link to that in the website so everybody can know how to spell it properly for you. It'll be in the blog, the show notes are on our blog, so that we'll have that link for you. And I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you for the insight. And thank you for empowering me to feel good in my own space.
Oh, thank you. This was fun to be here. Thank you, Chris.
Wow, that was such a great conversation. And I'm so grateful that Felicia was here to tell me I didn't have to do it by the rules. I didn't have to do life or my home by the rules. I get to create my journey and my space and my experience. And that felt really empowering for me. So, thanks for listening to today's podcast. We talked about smudging, and if you're new to smudging and want to learn more, I have a special gift for you. Go to groundingjourney.com forward slash smudging, and I've got a smudging 101 guidebook for you. I'll put the link in the show notes and in the blog post that you can check it out. But if you're interested in learning a little bit more about actually clearing your space once you've got it where you want to feel and removing that stagnant energy, my Smudging 101 guidebook is going to be amazing to help you. Thank you so much for being a part of my journey. It is an honor to be a part of yours. And I hope that you'll take a moment and, if you haven't, subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. And if you're on a platform like Apple Podcasts that allows you to leave a review, I would love if you could leave a comment. Let me know what you're loving about it and how it's helping you so that I can continue creating conversations that will enrich all of our lives.